Hello everyone, my name is Donnie and welcome back to the Jukebox. We're back and today we're talking about the Grammys. Probably the most consistent thing on this channel. Now, if you've been around for a minute, you'll probably know I like dropping my Grammys predictions around the time when it's actually the Grammys. And since this year's edition is going down in just a few weeks, I thought I'd do things in a similar way as last time and give you guys my thoughts on how I think the night is going to go. Now, I like keeping my predictions videos short and sweet, so I'm only going to be discussing the general categories in this one. I'll probably be posting my picks for the genre specific categories over on my Instagram and Twitter, so definitely check those out if you want my thoughts on those. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my Grammys predictions for 2023. We're gonna work our way up to Album of the Year, which I'm sure most people would consider the biggest prize on the night. So let's start off light with my thoughts on the Best New Artist category. Now, surprisingly, out of the general categories, the nominees for Best New Artist are the ones I'm the least familiar with out of the bunch. Samara Joy is a name I heard around on social media quite a bit last year. I haven't checked out too much of her music, but from what I've heard, she has a great voice. Omar Apollo is another name I've heard around for a few years on some great tracks, but I haven't listened to enough of his releases from last year to know if he's truly Best New Artist worthy. For me, my personal pick and prediction for the actual winner is between two names on this list, Anita and Latto. Now, both of these artists are also in the list of names I'm not too familiar with, but compared to the others, I've heard the most buzz about these artists. Latto is actually an artist I knew about way back in 2016 when she appeared in season 1 of Lifetime's The Rap Game with Jermaine Dupri, so to see her now at the mainstream status she's at is kinda cool, but since then, while I definitely wouldn't consider the majority of her music aimed towards someone like me, in terms of popularity, I'd easily consider a top 5 female rapper in the game right now, and I swear I don't think I've heard more than 2 Anita songs in my life, but I know she's one of the most popular Latin American artists in the world right now, so with that alone in mind, I think she has a valid claim to take this one home as well. So as I mentioned earlier, my personal pick and prediction for the winner on the night are both tied between Latto and Anita. My apologies for barely knowing anything about the other nominees here, but I honestly don't really care who comes out on top in this one. My next fairly easy prediction can be found in the Song of the Year category, so let's go ahead and move on to that one. Now, out of the nominees here, this one is a no-brainer for me, but don't get it twisted, there's definitely a lot of competition in this category. Adele is always one to watch in whatever category her name can be found, and Easy on Me, while far from her best in my opinion, was definitely one of the better annual piano ballad type beat songs from last year. Beyonce is obviously one of the most well-known artists in the entire awards nominations this year, and it's hard to deny she really pulled out a great performance on Break My Soul, so she can definitely be one to keep an eye on as well. But for me, none of the nominees come close to one of the best songs of 2022, The Heart Part 5 by Kendrick Lamar. Now, just in case anybody has no clue what the difference between Song of the Year and Record of the Year is, no worries, we won't judge around here. The Song of the Year category is more focused on the songwriting and compositional aspects of the song, and this award goes to the writers who worked on the track. On the other hand, Record of the Year recognizes the artists, producers, and engineers that worked on a song.
Why am I explaining that, you ask?
Well, cause from a songwriting and compositional aspect, Kendrick Lamar pulled a straight masterclass with his comeback performance on The Heart Part 5. There's a ton of videos that have broken down the themes and messages Lamar brings to the spotlight with his signature pen game on this track, and luckily for you, I'm not here to spoil these songs, I'm just giving my honest predictions. So for my personal pick for Song of the Year, I have King Kenny coming through with the win here, but I wouldn't be surprised if either Adele, Beyonce, or even possibly Taylor Swift got this one on the night. Alright, moving on to the third category, and the next one up on the list is Record of the Year. Now, Record of the Year is another solid category packed with a ton of Grammys alumni in this one, and I could definitely see the outcome on the night going down a few different ways. Now, just a quick reminder, this category focuses on the artists and production team that contributed to the record, and I think Break My Soul by Beyonce checks off a lot of qualities of a Record of the Year. Even though I personally wasn't the craziest about her latest album, Renaissance, overall, I think her vocal performance on Break My Soul is one of the best on the album, and the beat is just as uplifting and energetic as Beyonce is on on this cut. My long shot prediction for this category is an interesting one, but I think Bad Habit by Steve Lacy could be an unexpected winner. In my opinion, even aside from this song's crazy commercial success, Bad Habit was one of the best songs from last year. If you checked out my best albums of 2022 video, you know I've already sung my praises about Steve Lacy, especially his work on his recent album Gemini Rights. If he were to somehow walk away with a Grammy for this track, I'd totally be okay with it. However, despite that, this category has another familiar face that might pose a threat to the other nominees.
I know that ain't who I think it is.
Yeah, my personal pick has to go to Kendrick again, because if we're talking about a category that recognizes the best artist performance and production of the year, The Heart Part 5 has to be in the discussion there. Now, before anybody hits the comments saying I'm overpraising Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers here, this track was dropped as a standalone cut before the album even came out. And even though it was later added to the album as a bonus track on streaming platforms, I still consider this one separate from the record. And what bad is there to say about this track? It's a vintage Kendrick Lamar performance, calling back to the production styles of previous albums like To Pimp a Butterfly. The sample work on this track is incredible, and it gives Kendrick the perfect playing ground to work his magic. Again, not gonna spoil too much about these tracks if you haven't heard them, but for my personal picks, I'd go with Kendrick Lamar, and I'll even throw in Steve Lacy as well. And my prediction for who the Grammys will give this one to is tied between Beyonce, Kendrick, and maybe Adele. Now, finally, let's go ahead and wrap things up with my predictions for Album of the Year. Now, call me out if you guys want to, but as a whole, I feel like this category is kind of mid this year. Now, as usual, there's a ton of recognizable acts from top to bottom, but a lot of these albums aren't even these artists' best projects. Adele, Harry Styles. Now, Bad Bunny might be a frontrunner for a lot of people given his mainstream success from last year. I'm gonna be honest here, despite the fact that this man's numbers, especially in terms of streaming, were insane in 2022, I haven't heard much from the album outside of Moscow Mule, which I thought was okay. So if he were to walk away with this one, I can't say much because I've only heard about 1 or 2 tracks. Beyonce, as I mentioned earlier, is always one to watch, especially for this category, and I think she's rightfully one of the favorites for Album of the Year with Renaissance. When the nominations first dropped last year, I thought the record 100% deserved to be on the list, especially if we're talking about big names coming through with great albums in 2022. I think Beyonce has to be mentioned in that conversation. Honestly, with some actual marketing to go along with the album, I think Renaissance could have left way more of an imprint in the industry last year. But my personal pick and Beyonce's competition for this category, in my opinion, has to be...
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the...
Okay, I can explain, but let me start off by saying that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers isn't even my #1 album from last year, or even my favorite album from Kendrick Lamar. However, for me personally, out of the nominations here, this is another win for Kendrick. This was the album I listened to the most last year, and I really enjoyed going back to listen for new things to pick out. There were definitely hip-hop albums better than Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in 2022. The Forever Story by Jid for me is an overall better record just off the top of my head, but the Recording Academy are the ones who do the nominations and not me. So my personal pick for Album of the Year would go to Kendrick Lamar, but my prediction for Awards Night is a toss-up between Mr. Morale and Renaissance. So this could definitely be a clash of the titans, and I'm definitely interested to see how this one is going to play out. But there you have it. Those are my picks and predictions for the Grammy Awards this year. Last time, I actually guessed more correctly on the personal picks compared to the Grammy predictions in 2022. So who knows, we might get an upset or two when we find out in a few weeks. Let me know some of your predictions for how this edition of the Grammys will go down. What are your thoughts on the nominations and who's your artist or artists to watch? Let me know down in the comments, and drop a like if I wasn't too bad with mine. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter to stay connected, and I'll catch you guys in the next video, hopefully with the review of the 2023 Grammy Awards. Take care.
At the underground piano, dressed in camo, the grenades, guns, and ammo, death the sample, send them a bouquet and a candle. I came to take back that other 2/5 of a man, so from a